Well, good afternoon, and thank you for coming along this afternoon. Now, tomorrow, you will attend the launch of the Conservative manifesto. Usually, we would gather you together the day afterwards to go through the numbers, point out the problems in the costings, and expose the holes in their plans. In this election, we do not need to wait. Tomorrow, you will see a document littered with unfunded commitment after unfunded commitment, a desperate wish list, the most expensive panic attack in history. From a weak, desperate Prime Minister who, in the chaotic scattergun of announcements which he has made in this campaign to date, has not even bothered to try to make his sums add up. They tried to mislead the British people once in this campaign about the costings of Labour's policies, and now they are doing the same about their own. So today, I am going to take you through the Tory costings and explain why the money's not there. Their manifesto will be full of promises which they will claim is funded through savings in the welfare budget and cracking down on tax avoidance. But as I will demonstrate today, any promises they make funded by these savings are lies, because the money's simply not there. When it comes to the costings, there are three crucial and uncontestable points. Number one, if they claim tomorrow that they have £12 billion of welfare savings to spend elsewhere, that is a flagrant lie. It must be understood and called out, and I will demonstrate why. Number two, when they will say, as they repeatedly have, that they have £6 billion of tax avoidance savings to spend on other pledges, that is not correct. And number three, whatever savings they do make from tax avoidance, almost all of it will have been spent delivering their national service scheme, the costs of which they have got badly wrong. Even on any Conservative with a small c view, the Tory sums do not add up. The money is simply not there. Let me explain why. Firstly, welfare savings. Let's start with the 7 pledges on welfare Mel Stride re-announced yesterday, where he said he would deliver £12 billion of savings. Page 3 of the document in your hands takes each of these pledges in turn. Firstly, they told us they would, in their words, tighten up how the benefit system assesses someone's capability for work. As I know, from my days as the Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary, this refers to their plans to tighten and reform the work capability assessment announced in the 2023 autumn statement. The OBR scored savings of £1.3 billion from this policy. That means these savings are already within the government's spending baseline. They have already been spent on previously announced cuts to national insurance. They cannot spend the same money twice. The money's not there. Secondly, reform to fit notes. Again, in the 2023 autumn statement, the government announced reform to fit notes, and it was assessed by the OBR, who did not adjust their forecast for labour supply due to, quote, significant uncertainty. Any saving, however, from fit notes is already baked into government plans. Again, the money is not there. Thirdly, on closing benefit claims, for people out of work for a year, they have already announced this proposal and banked the impact of them, again, in the 2023 autumn statement. But what's worse, this doesn't save money at all, because when they first announced it, the Treasury suggested this change would cost £10 million a year in additional administration costs. The money's not there. Fourthly, on mental health, increased funding for talking therapies was announced in the 2023 autumn statement. And again, not only has the impact of this been baked in by the OBR, They were clear that the savings did not outweigh the costs. The Tories have announced more money for the same scheme, and the same will be true again. The money's not there. Fifth, on the acceleration of legacy benefits migrating to universal credit. In autumn 2022, the Treasury and the OBR said the government would save money by delaying the migration to universal credit. Now the Tories are saying they can save money by accelerating the migration to universal credit. It's desperate. They're making it up as they go along. The money's not there. 6, the Tories have not offered any reform to personal independence payments. They have simply said they will look at the options. They can't save money when they haven't even identified what they are committing to. This isn't a credible plan. It's more like a wing and a prayer. Yes, the money is not there. Finally, they claim they will tackle benefit fraud. Let me take you through the numbers on benefit fraud. Overpayments due to fraud and error have risen from 4.5 billion in 2019-20 to 9.7 billion in the latest figures. Rishi Sunak has lost £1 million to benefit fraud and error every hour he's been Prime Minister. So not only is the money not there, the DWP are actively losing money to fraud. Taken together, every one of these 7 pledges has either been banked by the OBR or has no savings attached to it at all. So whatever the Conservatives pledge on welfare savings in their manifesto tomorrow, it will produce not a single penny of new money relative to the last OBR forecast. And whatever desperate pledge they make, these are promises they cannot fund from savings they cannot find. The money's simply not there. Next, let me quickly turn to the tax avoidance savings, because this is very straightforward. That's page 5 of your document. The Tories have claimed they'll raise £6 billion by cracking down on tax avoidance, and they have made 4 pledges so far, which they say will be wholly or partly funded from those savings: the National Service Scheme, the pensioner tax allowance, the extra funding for towns, and the increased thresholds for the child benefit tax change. They even quoted Rachel Reeves's tax avoidance plan in their press notice for the last 2 announcements to try and lend credibility to their costings. But so far, they have forgotten one crucial thing. Labour's plan to tackle tax non-compliance, announced by Rachel in April, recognised the need for £900 million of upfront investment in HMRC staffing and technology in order to deliver the projected £6 billion of savings. This is why our plan produces a net saving not of £6 billion, but £5.1 billion. We would assume these upfront costs will be accounted for in our manifesto tomorrow, and that will become crucial when you look at the pledges which they are aiming to fund from that tax avoidance pot. But that brings me to the third point, the National Service Scheme. That's page 6 of the document in front of you. This is a scheme under which every single year 30,000 18-year-olds would be sent into the armed forces for 12 months, and 745,000 others would be required to complete community service activities in their local area for 25 days per year. The Tories said this scheme would cost £2.5 million per year by the time it is fully up and running. But based on data from the Ministry of Defence itself and analysis of the defence experts, it is clear that it will cost at least double that amount. Now, we have struggled in vain to work out how the Conservatives got their costings of this proposal so wrong. Did they forget about the training costs? Did they forget about the accommodation and the facilities cost? Did they assume that 18-year-olds would be unpaid? Estimates provided to Parliament by the Ministry of Defence 4 years ago suggest that the 14-week training course alone for the 30,000 new recruits joining the armed forces each year would cost, at today's prices, 1.5 billion. If you include the costs of paying and supervising these recruits for the remaining 38 weeks of the year, and the costs of the community service activities for the other 745,000 young people, one thing is clear. The National Service Pledge, in the way they have so far explained it, will need to use almost every penny of the £5.1 billion in tax avoidance savings to pay for it. And if they've used all those tax avoidance savings and the abolition of the Shared Prosperity Fund to pay for the National Service Policy, then the money is not there to fund the pledges on new towns, the pledges on child benefit, or the new age-related tax allowance. So as things stand, those pledges to pensioners, towns, and the better-off families are a total work of fiction. They cannot spend the same money twice. The money's not there. Those are the three main issues: the non-existent welfare savings, the overestimated avoidance savings, and the miscalculation of the national service costs. If you put those three together, every proposed tax change they have promised in this election campaign and everyone you will hear tomorrow completely falls apart because the money's simply not there. And that is without even mentioning some of their other non-tax pledges, like the extra 100,000 apprenticeships, supposedly paid for by cancelling the funding of non-productive university courses, which falls apart as soon as you ask the question, what happens if those students switch to other courses? And again, even the money for apprenticeships is not there. And incidentally, if the Tories want to quibble with any of this, if they want to try and stand by their figures and say that the analysis in front of you is wrong, then why not publish the Treasury costings of their own pledges? They announced the National Service Scheme 3 days after the general election was called. Rishi Sunak said it was something he'd always wanted to do. Presumably at some stage, the Treasury has been asked to look at that proposal. So why are the Conservatives so reluctant to publish the Treasury's own analysis of how much that scheme would cost, not to mention the welfare savings and all other costings? So in conclusion, Tory tax and spending plans are a fraud on the electorate. When they make more desperate promises tomorrow, funded by £12 billion of imaginary welfare savings, or £6 billion in inflated and already spent tax avoidance savings, you will know that is a lie, as I have laid out clearly today. The money is not there. Rishi Sunak and the Conservative Party have already given the country the highest tax burden in 7 decades. They need to explain tomorrow how they will fund their desperate wish list, how they will fund their 70-page panic attack, the most expensive Tory manifesto in recent history, because the money is not there. The British people are still paying the price for the last time the Tories made reckless, unfunded spending commitments. Mortgages skyrocketed, and they will again. Working people cannot afford 5 more years of the Tories. So, in closing, I want to be clear about the other reason all this matters, and the judgment that the Labour Party has to make in the face of this desperate barrage of unfunded pledges. When I go around the country, people understand that this is not the time for politicians to be making pledges they cannot fund or promises they cannot deliver. This is not the time for fancy economics. We are all still paying the price for the Conservative experiment under Liz Truss. This is the time for serious government which understands the challenges we face and is prepared to take the tough decisions. That is exactly why Labour has refused to get into an arms race with the Tories over election pledges and make our own unfunded promises. We could have easily said we would match every one of the commitments they have made in this campaign and spend the savings that they say can be achieved. But we are now the party of stability and sound public finances. We will not put a false prospectus before the British people. When the Tories make desperate promises with money that is not there, it is not the Labour Party's job to copy them. It is our responsibility to call that out. And that is what we are doing today. So in conclusion, whatever the Tories announce tomorrow, the money is not there. Thank you. So I will now go to questions, and I've been given a list. I believe, on my list at least, anyway, it's John Ray from ITV News.
Hi there. I mean, everybody's tax and spend promises are under scrutiny. Can I ask you, are you ruling out, Labour that is, are you ruling out increases in capital gains tax?
You'll have seen our tax plans that Rachel Reeves has set out with her triple lock announcement over the weekend. Under a Labour government, there will be no increase in income tax, no increase in national insurance, no increase in VAT. Nothing in our plans requires additional tax to be raised. We will be straight with the British public. Every commitment we put forward in our manifesto will be fully funded and fully costed. You'll know where the money is coming from. We've been clear, as I say, nothing in our plans requires additional tax to be raised.
So is that a yes or a no? Sorry.
I have explained. We have made our commitment clear on income tax, national insurance and VAT. It will not increase. The Tories have lied about the Labour's tax plans, and I am being clear today, nothing in our plans requires additional tax to be raised. Sean. Sean from the BBC, in case there's another Sean.
Thank you. So, if you're not going to raise taxes, if there are no additional taxes required, does that mean you're going to have to borrow more to pay for your plans?
So let me be absolutely clear about our plans. We will always put sound public finances first. We've seen what happened with the Conservatives when they played fast and loose with the public finances. It means working people across the country are now paying more on their mortgage. Every single commitment that we put forward on our manifesto will be fully funded and fully costed, and you'll know where every penny piece of the money, every penny piece of the investment is coming from. We've made significant announcements. As you know, we've announced we're going to fully close the non-domiciled loophole and use that money to fund 40,000 extra appointments a week in the National Health Service, because we know there are 7 million people on the waiting list. We've talked about VAT on private school fees, which we'll use to recruit more teachers in schools across the country, in state schools across the country, and invest in mental health services across the country. So every single one of our commitments is fully funded. We'll never play fast and loose with the public finances. We will not increase VAT, national insurance, or income tax. The party you cannot trust with the public finances is the Tories, because whatever promise they make tomorrow, the truth is the money is not there. Serena.
You've said you're no longer in a position to scrap tuition fees altogether, but that you would reform it to make it fairer. Can you reassure voters, especially younger voters, that they won't see their tuition fees go up? So I'm talking about the fees, not just amending loan repayments.
Well, today I'm talking about the Conservatives' tax and spend policy and explaining why the money
fees going up?
The money is not there. You'll see in our manifesto later this week what we have to say on that front. But every single commitment we put forward to the British public will be fully costed. We'll explain where the money is coming from, unlike the Conservatives, who are trying to spend money they cannot find, from savings they cannot identify, because the money is simply not there. Olivia.
Can you rule out public spending cuts?
What we have said is that the days of austerity are not returning with a Labour government. As you know, we are never going to play fast and loose with the public finances. We saw what happened with the Conservatives and Liz Truss and that. It means a lot of your viewers on GB News are paying more on their mortgage as a consequence. We've announced where we're going to put extra investment into the National Health Service and the education sector to bring down the waiting lists. Not only is that good for somebody waiting for treatment, in many instances it will help people get back to work, which is good for the economy. And of course, we strongly believe that giving our children the best start in life is one of the number one priorities of any government, which is why we want to recruit more teachers for our schools and invest in mental health care for children in schools as well.
Does that mean you will be cutting public service?
No. The days of austerity are not returning. Now, what we know we're going to have to make tough choices. We're under no illusions about that. That is because we are inheriting an economic mess. The public finances have been wrecked under the Conservatives, as you know, and that will be in our inheritance should we be fortunate enough to form a government. We are also, and we're not going to make any apology for this, committed to tough fiscal rules when it comes to the public finances, because we want to see debt falling as a percentage of GDP. But it's not just about the public finance, your public finance rules. It's also about how you grow the the economy. And if you can get your economy growing, then you can use the proceeds of growth in the future. And we have a plan for growth in this campaign. Our manifesto that you'll see later this week is a plan for growth. We're going to reform planning rules. The Conservatives refuse to reform planning rules because they're always too scared to touch planning rules. We're going to reform planning rules. Indeed, Martin Wolf in the Financial Times today is saying it's an embarrassment and a disgrace that we don't build in this country, and if we did build, we could get growth motoring again. That is one of the things we're going to do. By getting people back to work, by reforming the way Job Centre Plus works, a big public service reform agenda, we can get people off benefits and back into the workplace. Because a life on welfare is a life going nowhere. We want to get people back into work. That contributes to economic growth. Treating people who are out of work because they can't work because of their sickness, helping those people get treated quickly and return to employment is also a growth measure. And indeed, what we've announced today, or Bridget Phillipson has announced today, about expanding childcare, 100,000 extra places and 3,300 more nurseries, that will help many people return to work as well. Again, that contributes to growth. So yes, we know we're under no illusions about the wreckage of the public finances we will inherit after 14 years of the Tories, but we have a plan to grow the economy. But the Conservatives cannot make that offer to the British public in this election because they cannot identify the savings to fund any of their commitments in this campaign because, as I say, the money is not there. Chris from The Times.
Thank you. Yeah, so you've now got this hierarchy on tax where you've explicitly ruled out some. So surely the only conclusion we can draw is that the other ones where you've repeatedly been asked about, like capital gains tax, inheritance tax, fuel duty, is that you're thinking about raising them, thinking about the circumstances in which you might need to do so because of this commitment to sound public finances. So what are the circumstances where you would need to raise them? Is it to do with lower growth forecasts, higher borrowing costs? Because obviously, if there weren't any circumstances in which you'd raise them, you would just say you'd never raise them.
As you know, Chris, there's nothing in our plans that requires additional tax to be raised. Our commitments on tax are crystal clear with our triple lock approach. No increase in national insurance, no increase in income tax, no increase in VAT, and we will never play fast and loose with the public finances. It puts mortgages up, and any tax commitment the Tories offer tomorrow, it will be based on savings they cannot find, because as I have identified today, those welfare savings will not materialise. The money is not there. Ben, at The Guardian, sorry, there.
Thanks. Is this preemptive strike you're engaging in because you were so rattled at the 2,000 figure that Starmer that was thrown at Starmer, and he was quite slow to actually shut it down last week, and it's actually stuck?
No, we are making this presentation today because we are so concerned about the people struggling in our constituencies, paying more on their mortgages, struggling to get by because the Conservatives wrecked the public finances and set mortgages sky high. We're always going to stand up for working people and warn them of the consequences of a Conservative government who will wreck the public finances all over again, particularly when they're making commitments, when they haven't got the money to back those commitments up, because, as I keep saying, the money is not there. Right. Nick Guthridge from The Telegraph.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to ask you, it's come out today that you sort of ditched another funding promise, this time on the lifetime pensions allowance, which I think is worth about £1 billion. So all your sums where you're promising to raise money, can you guarantee that there's going to be nothing more going? Because if not, where you say you're going to pay for things, how can people look at those sums and think that they add up if something's being sort of dropped this late in the day?
Well, I believe there was speculation around that in the Financial Times, and far be it from me to question the excellent journalism of the Financial Times, but you'll have to wait and see for our manifesto to see exactly what we're saying about the lifetime allowance and pensions. However, I can reassure you that every single commitment we make in that manifesto will be fully costed. We'll explain where every penny piece is coming from. There'll be no unfunded tax changes based on savings that cannot be found, because under the Tories, the money is not there, and we will never play fast and loose with the public finances. David Burke at The Mirror.
Hi, thank you very much. So we're expecting a very cautious manifesto from Labour in a few days' time. But you say over the course of a 5-year parliament, obviously you're hoping that the situation would improve. What's on the wish list for things that you would hope to be able to then commit money to over the course of this Parliament?
Well, I mean, you talk about caution. That is not how I would characterise the Labour campaign. Look, if there's somebody watching the press conference at home this afternoon who is struggling to get on the housing ladder, well, we'll say to those young people who are probably on their sofa watching this press conference that we're going to reform the planning rules and we're going to build more homes in this country and we're going to make it easier for people to access mortgage finance. And when that young couple perhaps start a family, when their children go to primary schools, there'll be free breakfast clubs every morning in those primary schools. And if they need help with childcare, so both of them can go to work, there's going to be 100,000 more childcare places in 3,300 more nurseries. We're going to cut energy bills for good and create good, well-paid jobs, which will help that family get by. And if, heaven forbid, one of those family members falls seriously ill, or they've got a relative who is struggling because they need a hip replacement or a knee replacement, then there's going to be 40,000 extra appointments in the National Health Service, which means waiting times will be cut and people can get treatment in a timely fashion. I don't think any of that is caution. I think that is a transformation of Britain compared to where we are today after 14 years of the Conservatives. And every one of those policies I've just outlined is fully costed. We explain where the money is coming from, in contrast to the Tories who cannot fund any of their promises because with the Conservatives it's clear the money is not there. Chloe, the eye.
Thank you. Can you tell voters, under a Labour government, which government departments would have their spending protected and which would not?
Well, you're inviting me to make budgets and spending reviews. Let me be absolutely clear. The days of austerity are not returning. We believe that we do need investment in the National Health Service because of the commitments I've talked about, in education. We do need investment in other areas of the public sector, which we've said, childcare, for example, we're talking about that today, and we've explained where the money is coming from for that. Right? But we know we have to make tough decisions because of the wreckage of the public finances after 14 years of the Tories. But the way in which you deal with this is growing the economy. In fact, I think I was listening to a podcast from Paul Johnson from a few weeks ago when he was talking to David Miles, an economist at Imperial, and he was talking about the need to get growth in the economy in order to bring debt down as a percentage of GDP. We have a big growth agenda. It involves, yes, investing in green renewable energy sources for the future that creates good, well-paid jobs. It means reforming Job Centre Plus, a big public service reform agenda to help people get back to work. It involves helping people off waiting lists so they can return to the workplace as well. So you'll see in our manifesto this week that it is a manifesto for growth. In contrast, the Tories will be publishing, I think, I saw on Twitter before I came on here, a 76-page panic attack document with commitments where they cannot explain how they are going to fund it because the money is not there. Kamal.
You've talked about not increasing taxes on individual people. Will you look to address the kind of stealth tax that comes with frozen tax thresholds?
Look, our tax position is crystal clear with our triple lock that Rachel Reeves outlined. No increase in income tax, no increase in VAT, no increase in national insurance. There is nothing in our plans that requires additional tax to be raised. Every single commitment we will make tomorrow, I beg your pardon, in the manifesto this week, it's not tomorrow, it's the Tories tomorrow, every one of our commitments we make in our manifesto will be fully costed. You'll know where the money is coming from, in contrast to the Tories who are trying to make promises based on funding they cannot deliver and savings that they cannot find. For the Tories, the money is not there. Jim at the FT.
Jonathan, you keep referring to no increase in income tax, no increase in national insurance, no increase in VAT.
Yeah.
A week ago, there were 4 taxes. The other one was corporation tax. How come that slipped off the list? And the second thing is, you've accused the Conservatives of coming up with dodgy statistics about your taxes, but you've got a very dodgy 71 billion figure about the Conservatives' unfunded policies, of which 45 billion of that on NICs and 10 billion of that on inheritance tax are 2 policies that don't exist because the Conservatives have repeatedly said they have no plans to get rid of either of those.
Whoa, Jim. I've heard all kinds of Conservative spokespeople tour studios telling us they're going to end so-called double taxation on work, which is their shorthand for the abolition of national insurance. Now, if they abolish national insurance contributions, that's a £46 billion price tag. And they can only abolish national insurance by either merging it with income tax, which means pensioners pay more on their plans, around £700 more, or they cut the National Insurance Fund, because national insurance contributions flow into the National Insurance Fund by law, by the Social Security Act from the 1990s and 2000s from memory. I can double-check it, but I'll get the exact date for you. But it flows into the National Insurance Fund, and the National Insurance Fund funds the state pension, and a proportion of it goes to the National Health Service. That's in legislation. If they are cutting £46 billion from that fund, the future of the state pension and the National Health Service are at risk. And they have still not asked the question that if all of you stop paying national insurance, how do you build up your state pension entitlements in the future? We'll see, won't we? Because they seem to keep telling us that they're going to end the double taxation on work by getting rid of it. And this was rejected by Nigel Lawson, no less, back in the day, because he pointed out it will mean pensioners paying more. So that is really a question for the Tories at their press conference tomorrow. We have been clear, and Rachel Reeves has been quite clear, that we are not increasing income tax, national insurance and VAT. That is her triple lock. She was talking about it yesterday. There is nothing in our plans that require additional tax to be raised. Every policy we put forward tomorrow will be fully costed. Tomorrow, Thursday. It's the Tories tomorrow. Katie.
Quite a few people and some in the Labour Party suspect that a Labour government in the first couple of days will say the public finances, thanks to the Tories, are even worse than we expected, and therefore change your economic plans. Can you rule that out?
Well, in some ways, we know the state of the public finances. The public finances are a mess. There's no secret about that. We all know the public finances are shot to pieces thanks to the decisions taken by the Conservatives and Liz Truss. We'll pay more on our mortgage as a consequence of that. Our pension funds were put in peril thanks to them playing fast and loose with the public finances. And if the Conservatives get in again, the public finances will be shot to pieces because they have made all of these commitments and they cannot explain how they will fund any of them. The Tories need to explain where the money will come from. Will it be borrowing again, putting up people's mortgages? The truth is, as I've explained here, they have £12 billion worth of supposed new welfare savings when it's just a re-announcement of policies they've announced in 2022 and 2023. Some of the policies, by the way, which they copied from me. When I was the Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, I like to say that Mel Stride was the Shadow Work and Pension Secretary in copying my policies. They are already baked into the OBR and government baselines. That money has been spent on the existing national insurance cuts. Any new tax changes they announce in their manifesto tomorrow cannot be funded by this £12 billion because it is already in the government baseline. They have to explain where that extra money is coming from, but they will not be able to because, as I've explained today, the money is simply not there. Okay? And thank you very much for coming over to our press conference. Thank you.